Today's the big day, fellas, or it's in a couple of days depending on when this video is going out, but Kukulkan is now on the NA side of things. The most bonkers busted Buster AoE servant is now hitting the game. And the title of this video for once is actually accurate. Yeah, this character is an absolute must-summon character for most masters, because not only is she going to be a superb DPS, but she can also flex as a little bit of a support, which we're going to break down in today's video. Obviously, we'll probably have some contrarians in the comment section down below going, well, actually, you probably don't need this character. And, they're kind of true, right? You can get by with your Arjuna Altars and your Morgans, but look, that's how a brokey thinks. And if you want to be doing the best of the best farming that this game has to offer, you want to get your grubby little mitts on Kukulkan. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the gameplay over the last couple of years, people mauling about how good she is. And even people like myself who don't even have Oberon or Koyenskaya on their JP accounts still find a way to use her because she just outputs a boatload of damage and just has a phenomenal kit that it's kind of hard to not use her. But as per usual, if you enjoy the daily FGO content grind, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as it's free and helps me out more than you know. And I will always make sure that you are well informed on what is going on both the NA and JP side of things. But with all that being said, let's start diving into her kit, starting off with her hits. And yeah, she's got a little bit of a strange one. She's rocking a triple Buster deck. You'd think she was a Berserker, but no, they just want to maximize on that damage, which you may be saying, ZTL, doesn't that mean this lady's going to have absolutely zero NP refund? How am I supposed to get my NP back? Well, don't you worry. You simply slap in a Koyenskaya of Light into your team, pop that second skill, and would you look at that, every single one of those Buster cards is going to be refunding 20% battery, as long as you have two of them, but even if you only have one, that's still 10% battery per turn. And would you also look at that, you're going to be doing big fat Buster crits all over the place. And even when you do find that one arts card, would you look at that 0.78% NP gain with a 3-hit arts card? That's what we like to call extra spicy for those nice arts crit refunds where you're just going to be just fine, provided that, she's also rocking her own massive battery, so I think it's going to be all good. We also have that 5-hit extra attack, which for the uninitiated, if you're new to the channel, the extra attack is a composite card that gen stars NP and big boy damage, and when you go for your NP5 Kukulkan and are swimming in coins for her, you could take those coins, go upgrade that append skill to raise the efficiency of your extra attack, to turn it into the omnipotent extra attack. I mean, she's also got a fine quick card. I know I didn't really talk about it too much, but hey, it's there for genning stars, it's there for mighty chaining, blah, blah, blah. I also want to highlight her passive skills over here before we move into her main skills, because her passive skills kind of just show you how good this servant is going to be off-rip. So one that doesn't really get mentioned is Civilization Creation EX, which increases the party's debuff success rate by 8% while she's on the field. That's actually not nothing. You just don't really see it prop up too often, but it is something to consider that if you're going to be using her in team comps where you want to have, I don't know, any type of debuff go on, whether it be a Buster defense down, a defense down, attack down, NP damage down, crit rate down, you want to poison the enemy, burn them, curse them, whatever have you, this is always going to ensure that those have an easier time going through, but it often gets overshadowed for what is probably the more broken passive skill that converts any invincibility buff that this character has into solemn defense, meaning that she is stepping on Castoria's toes. Anybody that can give this lady invincibility, congratulations, you now have unbypassable defense. The only way to get around it is to straight up remove it off of her, or I guess you could use Hakunon in like 2 years, but you fight that guy like once, barring that we maybe get more fights where people are able to remove solemn defense, it's still quite broken. She also has that 4 in her passive of giving herself 3% NP every single turn and dropping 10 stars every single turn, which would already be good on any normal servant, but for Kukulkan it's especially useful. So let's go ahead and start diving into her kit, starting off with skill 1, Charisma of the Jade A+. She's going to increase the party's attack by 20% for 3 turns and give them 30% critical attack resistance for 3 turns, and this is the gimmick for Kukulkan. All 3 of her skills have an upgradable version for them that for the price of 10 stars give you a bonus effect, and for Kukulkan, she will give herself an additional 30% attack buff for 3 turns. Consider how broken that is, that on a very good uptime of 3 turns only being down for 2 because 5-turn cooldown, you have 50% attack on this bad boy, and you have 30% critical chance resistance. Mind you, that resistance and the bonus attack is for the entire party, and then she just is getting a fat 30% for absolutely no reason, just for the price of 10 stars, which is very measly when you consider that Koyenskaya of Light, the main Buster support, does drop 20 stars on her second skill. You don't even need 2 of them. You can just bring your friends and you're good to go. Also consider that people like Merlin on like Overcharge 1 drop 10 stars every single turn, on top of Kukulkan dropping 10 every single turn. There's also stuff like 2030 in the game that drop anywhere from 8 to 10 stars, depending on if they're max limit broken or not. I mean, you've also got Star Bomb CEs, some of the really basic ones like Golden Catches the Carp that is going to become available for purchase when they add that into the Da Vinci shop. That starts you off with 50% battery, which is perfect for Buster looping because you want that 50% starting charge, but then also bombs you with like 30 stars or something. So you're pretty much good to go. There's like 75 billion different ways to turn these skills on immediately, and they are so OP. They tried to put a little bit of a restriction on this character by making her need stars, but unfortunately, stars are a little too free in this game. So already off to a very strong charisma with a very good self buff on the first skill. The second skill is where things get a little bit more nutty because it is not just a 50% battery for herself. It is a targetable 50% battery, and this doesn't cost any stars. If you just want to put her into a team comp, she can just give anybody a 50% battery. I know that over on the JP side of things, I'm a little down bad because I don't have Koyan Light, I don't have Oberon, but if I want to use characters like my Ace the Savior, sometimes you need to put Kukulkan in there, and being able to not only protect the party with that crit chance resistance and the attack buff giving her a little bit of extra damage, this 50% battery also does come in clutch. And then in CQs, this is either going to be 2 hits of evasion for herself that last for 3 turns, while also giving them Pierce Evasion or Sure Hit for 3 turns, or it's going to go to any one of the DPSs that you targeted this on. So she also again is functioning kind of like a support. She can flex into a utility character where she can still do really good damage because obviously you have that 30% attack buff that applies to herself, but then she can give stuff like battery, survivability, a little bit of support, I guess, with the crit resistance and the sure hit on the second skill over here. It's just a little bit nutty. It's just super insane what they're doing with this character, and it gets even better on the third skill because she gives herself invincibility for 1 turn, and would you remember that passive skill? That invincibility, it's actually solemn defense for 1 turn. So she's basically unkillable while this is up. Unless, again, you can remove it with like buff removal or something. And, you know, some bosses do have that. To be fair, there's also ways to counter that. I mean, you could just bring somebody like a Jufu, or you could bring somebody like a Santa Nightingale that gives you buff removal resistance. But then on top of that, she's going to give herself 30% buster damage for 3 turns and 50% crit damage for 3 turns, the same crit damage that somebody like Waver gives. And then at the cost of 10 stars, she's going to give herself an additional 30% NP damage. Would you look at that? She's giving herself every single buff type at really good intervals as well. 30% buster, 30% NP damage, 50% attack. That's pretty good. That ain't too bad. While also technically having 2 forms of survivability with the double dodge and the solemn defense over here, and she can also just crit really hard on top of all of that. Now you may be saying, well, ZTL, these skills are obviously really, really bonkers, but how are we ever going to do crits if we're consuming them for all of these skill upgrades? Well, I'm really glad you asked, because if we go look at her NP, one of the first effects you see over here is that she bombs 30 stars whenever she fires her NP. So if you consumed all of your initial stars, you know, with a starting charge CE that has a star bomb on it, and then maybe, I don't know, like Koyensky, a second skill, congratulations, you're going to get them all back immediately on the NP over here. Or if you just wanted to fire the NP first for some reason, now you can turn on all of her skills. Maybe you were doing a solo and didn't want to use a Star Bomb CE or something for some reason. But then on top of that, she has not 1, but 2 power mods.
And now, with the addition of 2, count 'em, 2.
Threat against humanity, 50% for 1 turn. And an Earth attribute power mod that goes anywhere from 150 to 200% depending on overcharge. And we all know there's no good Buster overcharge CEs, right? Like, none of those exist. And there's not other Buster servants that you could put at the front of an NP chain that would also scale up overcharge for other characters. Like, those just definitely don't exist. But then, as if she wasn't already doing enough, she seals all enemy skills for 1 turn as well. So again, more flexibility. If you're using her as more of a flex servant, kind of a pseudo DPS that's kind of supporting, well, she's also just kind of buying you additional turns, because we've all been there. You're about to beat a boss, they pop a survivability buff, and then you probably lose the fight. Or maybe the fight is a little closer than you wanted it to be. Or maybe they pop some big offensive buff and give themselves a battery, and now they smack you with an NP when you weren't ready. It's just really useful stuff to have that when you're spamming this NP, because again, with Koya and Sky, you're pretty much just doing raw battery farming. whether that be in actual farming or going into actual boss fights, because I'm sure you can tell, but Kukulkan is going to be pretty good going into boss fights, and when you're spamming NPs 3 turns in a row, you're locking the enemy out of using their skills unless they have some kind of break bar mechanic that allows them to remove all their debuffs, but again, that's not the most common thing. It is there, but not every boss has that. And again, just the 2 power mods she has are really good. I mean, when you get a new servant, the ideal power mods that they can have, I think, are threefold. One is man, one is earth, because that encompasses a lot of random free quest fodder enemies, and it encompasses a lot of servants. But then you have like self power mods, things where it's like, oh, I put poison on the enemy and then I hit them for bonus damage, or I burn the enemy and I get bonus damage, or I charm the enemy, stuff along those lines, because technically you can apply that to anybody, and those are usually really good and are only really dependent on how frequently you could put those debuffs on. Is it only like a 1-turn thing? Can you do it every single turn? And then enemies that have debuff resistance, that's the only thing that's really kind of stopped by. And usually those servants have some way to buff their debuff, like ability to apply debuffs to enemies, so it generally works out. But then you have Threat Against Humanity, not the most common power mod in the world, but that's why it's the smaller one, and it's going to be really good going into boss fights. So by securing somebody like Kukulkan, you effectively could just dunk on any of the major bosses in the game, because it's going to be really hard for them to counter everything she's doing. I mean, one of the things that they seem to just be doing en masse over on the JP side of things with recent bosses is just having them remove your buffs. Like, that seems to be the only thing they're able to do to counter people like Kukulkan being as strong as she is, or Castoria being as strong as he is. Just remove all their buffs. Just take them all away immediately, and then maybe they can't do anything. But again, players are wisening up, and we realize that we have people like Zhufu, who's a free-to-play 3-star that's on every single banner, or we also have Santa Nightingale. And with the evocation festivals, we can effectively pick up all the free-to-play servants whenever you have enough of the leaflets, which also drop from events and login bonuses whenever the festivals come around. And so even then, it's kind of just like, well, if you can't yeet all of my buffs, and I have just all the strongest buffs in the game, what are they really going to do? Get absolutely decimated, that's what. And decimated they shall be if you are using Kukulkan. I mean, I've talked about this before in like streams and whatnot, but way back in the day, maybe like a year or two ago, I think, there was a video that came out showcasing Koyan Dark with Black Grail versus Kukulkan without Black Grail, and then Kukulkan was out damaging her, which is just absolutely ludicrous. That is bonkers. I will try to put that video link in the description for people that are interested in that, but it's a little bit nutty. It's really insane what you can do with this character and just how overpowered she is. So is she a must summon? I mean, I would say if you were in an ideal world and you had no other servants that you really wanted to go for anytime soon, you should probably pick this servant up. I mean, they're gonna age very, very well. I mean, they're still ridiculous over on the JP side of things 2 years later, so she's a really solid investment, suffice to say. But unfortunately, we do live in a world where not everybody has infinite money and can't buy infinite Saint Quartz and do have other characters they want to save for. There is characters like Tiamat and Draco right around the corner. There are people who want to summon for Tets over Kukulkan over here. There are probably some people that want to summon for Popish Joanna or Takasugi, right? Now, I would say, compared to a lot of these other characters, she's probably just the best one to go for. I mean, you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of her, but technically, you will still be fine if you skip over her to go for, like, Draco, or if you want to summon for Oberon during summer, and you want to save up enough so you can guarantee at least pity Oberon, so that way you can have an easier time playing the game. Technically, you will be fine. This isn't like missing out on Castoria, or missing out on Koyenskaya, where if you do not have this character, you are locked out of a card type, right? Like, if you don't have Castoria, sure, you can do arts farming, but the lengths that you have to go to is usually going to be 1 or 2 servants to replace the 1 Castoria, and in a world where you're trying to make the most out of like your plug suits and whatnot, and also try to make the most out of your team costs, you're just not going to be able to high roll as much in 90++ nodes where that's going to matter a lot more. Same thing for Koyenskaya. If you don't have her, I mean, sure, you could probably figure out another way to do buster farming like I have to do over on the JP side of things, but it's objectively not as good as what I could be doing if I had my own Koyenskaya or my own Oberon. But Kukulkan being a DPS is one of those servants that, if you don't have her, sure, you're not high rolling as much going into 90++ nodes, you don't have as damaging of a servant, but if you already have like an Arjuna altar, or you've like NP5'd your Morgan, I don't know who would do that, and they're able to kind of get you through these nodes just fine right now, that's not really going to change very much. It's not like nodes get that much more difficult moving into the future, it's just different spices of, well, how are we going to divvy up the HP? Is the 1 million guy at the end? Is it 3 nodes of like 350k HP enemies? Like, how do we want to divvy it up? And I mean, that's kind of like the power creep for Buster, quote unquote, that people have been talking about, is that Buster servants usually struggle a little bit before they can actually re-loop their skills and they can stack them together. At least Kukulkan has really strong power available to her immediately because, again, you can just Star Bomb or just use Koyenskai's second skill and overcharge all of her skills and get her at full power pretty much for free for no reason. But there are other ways that you can get around some of these nodes. And I mean, if you're fine with certain nodes, with certain setups, depending on who you have, with maybe relying on face cards or just not doing a 90++ here or there, then you'll be absolutely fine. Again, she has that title of must summon because she's so bonkers, but realistically, the only must summon characters you have to have in FGO are the supports, because once you have them, you can functionally do whatever you want. So I hope I didn't stress out people too much in this video, and you kind of have the ability to see how broken and bonkers this character is, but also know that if you do not get her, it's not the end of the world. I mean, she'll be on GSSRs and stuff. You can put her on your Destiny Order summon. But with that being said, I hope this video serves as a catalyst for your Kukulkan summons. Let me know if you get her in the comment section down below. I'm gonna try my best to not summon for her, but we'll see how long that actually lasts. So with all that being said, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, peep the Twitch and the Discord down in the description down below, and I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.